Hello, this is Deb Del Vecchio-Scully. I'm a special consultant that was hired by Professional Design for Parkland to provide some trainings this weekend for Stoneman Douglas staff, students, and parents. These next slides will focus on the issue of survivor guilt and the aftermath of a communal trauma. Patience Carter is a survivor of the Orlando Pulse shooting, and in reading her blog, came across this quote that I feel just represents the burden of survivor guilt. The guilt of feeling lucky to be alive is heavy. It's like the weight of the ocean's walls, uncontrolled by levees. And she goes on in this blog post that she wrote to discuss how our thoughts can get mixed up or distorted after we go through an event where we survived but others didn't. And so I would encourage you to just look for her name, and the blog is on copebetter.com to read the whole blog. I think you're going to find it really helpful. So what is survivor guilt? It is a deep sense of guilt for being left behind after someone dies. And often it can look like uh, I feel guilty for having survived when this other person did. I feel guilty that I wasn't harmed physically when someone I care about was. And there's all of the shoulda, woulda, couldas, guilt for what I should have done, what I could have done, how I could have helped differently. If only I had done something, maybe it would have a different outcome. Another level of this is feeling guilty for whatever you did to survive, however you saved yourself, whether that meant you hid, you ran, whatever it was, there can be guilt because others weren't able to. And in the event when someone died protecting you, and we saw this after the Aurora Theater shooting, where there were two individuals who saved the people they were with and didn't survive themselves. And finally, parental survivor guilt. And that thought of, I should have been able to protect my child. It's my responsibility to have protected my child. It was my obligation, and so on. And so I want you to begin to think about a different way to conceptualize survivor guilt. And I came across this quote in my research, and I really think it helps to do that. So the goal here is to remember and to recover, but not to forgive and forget and pretend like this didn't happen. It is to move forward, but not move on. The sense of moving on is that it minimizes somehow what happened or the role that this person played in your life. So we remember while we heal and recover. Survivor guilt is really mixed up or distorted thoughts that we have about the shooting. And it really does need therapeutic intervention, meaning some kind of a therapy, because clearing these thoughts out of your mind isn't that easy to do. They can feel both illogical and irrational, but yet still feel true at the same time. It can also be a reason why people don't want to get better or feel like if I heal, it's somehow forgetting what happened, when it's really more like we remember and recover. And so some of those distortions might be, I don't deserve to feel better. I'm not worthy of relief. Um, I must be perfect in everything that I do in order to honor this person or these people who didn't survive. This can also worsen as you start to get better and heal. It's absolutely a side effect of trauma and PTSD. It can resolve, but it resolves with help. And I know the slide says on its own. I think there are some people where that will get better over time, but there are many, many who it won't. And it can keep you really stuck and unable to move forward and feel like you're just spinning your wheels. Uh, it can also worsen to the point of becoming almost obsessive, like obsessive compulsive, where you can't stop thinking about it and it intrudes on your daily functioning. When that happens, it's going to make you feel really uncomfortable. And it's really important that you seek out help. Some of the symptoms really do mirror trauma, and that can be just your mood. You might feel just really cranky or on edge or irritable. And have intrusive negative thoughts. And what that means is that the thoughts pop in and you can't really manage or control when they do. There can be really a sense of helplessness because you can't change this outcome. There can be flashbacks, there can be nightmares, there can be trouble sleeping. I think one of the key features is just really being really stuck and disconnected from oneself. There can be a lack of motivation because if you think about it, there's a part of you that isn't allowing you to move forward, right? The guilt is blocking you from taking steps forward in healing, keeping you stuck in this place of, with that distorted thought of, I need to somehow still honor this person or people, yet if I move forward, am I leaving them behind? Uh, and so it's complicated, and it really involves some of the basic grief work that we have to do, and some of the key tasks or functions that we have to complete in grief is to relocate the person who died to the past. And when it's a traumatic loss, which is different than another type of loss, right? Grief is an absolutely normal response to life and loss. But when it happens connected to a traumatic event, if it's an unnatural loss, if it's a premature loss, if it's a loss because of violence, you can get stuck in a loop of being on high alert, irritable, cranky, having tons of guilt, all of these intrusive thoughts and memories. And when this is what's happening to you every day, it can lead to this feeling of being so overwhelmed and needing it to stop, which can lead to suicidal feelings. So it's complicated and so important that you pay attention to this part of how you might be feeling and what you're going through. So what helps? Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that it's true, that you're having this strong guilt reaction. And it's a normal reaction to a highly abnormal situation. These feelings of survivor guilt are common and can often occur with trauma. The comparison thinking. What I mean by that is comparing yourself to anyone else or a different version of yourself, you know, or those intrusive thoughts really come in to start to tell you, I need to get ahead of how I feel, and sometimes kind of like being on a hamster wheel trying to be perfect, to get all A's because, hey, I survived, therefore I must. Where, a more healthy view is, I survived. Thankfully, I survived. Understanding survivor guilt is something that I describe as a strategy of survival. We have thoughts, feelings, sensations in our body that are ways of coping. Some of these coping strategies aren't as effective or healthy as others, and survivor guilt is one of those that isn't that healthy or effective for us. But it is a strategy for survival. with the right support and help, we can help you to reframe this and start to release that, the way that your mind and your brain are trapped into this really unhealthy loop. You can successfully reprocess the trauma memory. There are ways to do that. Treatments like eye movement desensitization reprocessing, or EMDR, trauma reconsolidation, TRM. That's another one that's very helpful. Um, Neurofeedback can be helpful for this. There are ways, there are therapies that are very effective in removing that strong emotional reaction and charge from the trauma memory. As that starts to fade, some of these other thoughts and feelings that have gotten mixed up in the trauma can start to be sorted through, and you can find relief. So there is hope. There absolutely is hope. And it isn't necessary or required to retell your story in great depth or length, or have to re-experience intense emotions. And, finally, I want you to know that having intense emotions may feel really unsafe to you, but it isn't. Most people are really strong and able to tolerate it. And it's in those moments that you reach out to your circle of support, whoever that might be. It might be parents, it might be siblings, it might be friends, it might be teachers, it might be a therapist, it might be a coach, it might be a pastor. It doesn't matter who it is, as long as you reach out and you let others know how you're feeling so they can be helpful to you. Another important aspect of survivor guilt is fostering forgiveness, not for the perpetrator or the act of the perpetrator, but for you, in order to find peace and freedom in your own heart. A part of survivor guilt is that we stay looped in a lot of emotions and distorting thoughts that are really unpleasant and uncomfortable. And part of the freedom that comes is by being able to choose forgiveness in a moment. Forgiveness is not a destination, it is a process. And it's a choice that we make again and again and again because of the freedom and perhaps even a sense of peace that can come when that choice is made. With survivor guilt, it's important to reflect on whose responsibility is it? Was it somehow mine? Could I have done something differently? And that answer is maybe yes, possibly. But in the end, everyone did the best that they could in a horrific, horribly difficult situation. Also thinking about how others around you would feel if you weren't able to be that healthy version of yourself that is still stuck inside you. It is there. It's maybe feel like it's buried a bit, but it can be recovered. One way to kind of work with your survivor guilt may be to, imagine having a conversation with your deceased friend, sibling, child, colleague, whomever it is, and really be able to listen. How would that person feel about how they want you to be living your life now? Survivor guilt and guilt of all kinds can be a way to block having to experience our grief and sadness. An ineffective way of trying to block our grief and sadness, because they're still there and they come up in uh, inconvenient moments and they intrude in ways that you're not able to feel like you have mastery or control over. Survivor guilt and traumatizing grief uh, are linked together. Survivor guilt is a side effect of trauma, but traumatic grief occurs when the loss is because of a violent event. It happens prematurely. It's an unnatural loss. when these things happen, the grief becomes traumatic, and you have this vicious cycle that goes round and round and round, and it's just a loop that you can't get out of. Getting helpful treatment for the trauma often breaks this looping and this cycle and can bring a relief to the sense of guilt. In order to have that full sense of relief, it's important for you to know that the grief work has to happen. You've got to be able to reorganize and move that person to your history, to your past. And there can be resistance to do that. And remember, this is about remembering, honoring, and recovering. That's how you can take a step forward towards your healing. And I want to empower you to take these steps because they will transform your pain into power in your life. And this, while never forgotten, will be a part of your life now. And there will be more emotional freedom to remember those that didn't survive in a way that perhaps might be slightly less painful. And if you need to find a therapist, Professionals United for Parkland can help you do that. You can go to their website. They have a Facebook page, an Instagram page to access them, and they can help you connect to that person to get that relief that you so deserve to have.